Woo!
Yay!
Yay!
Yes.
We're here. Welcome to the Miles with Moms podcast. I am one of 4 co-hosts. I'm Whitney.
I'm Tricia.
I'm Olivia.
I'm Shanna.
Olivia, I feel like you asked that at like posing a question. You're like, I'm Olivia?
I'm Olivia. Well, I was like, am I number 3 today? Did I type my name in correctly? Because earlier I did not. So.
Oh, really?
Olivia
My phone keeps auto-correcting you to Olive. I'm like, her name is not Olive. It's Olivia.
It's so cute, though. Oh,
That
I
is
wish.
cute. That is a cute name.
It's a
It's an
cute
adorable
name.
Olive. Olive.
Olive.
Star.
Well,
Cute.
we've been chit-chatting offline, not recorded, for like way too long. So it's time we actually start recording this conversation. Today, we are diving into finding time to run, which I mean, I think all mother runners are time poor. And it is just, we're so busy. There's so many barriers. It can just feel impossible because I don't know. It's like you try to do it early in the morning and somebody's waking up, or there's kid activities, and it can feel impossible. It really bugs me when people are like, "Oh, it's so nice you have time to run." I'm like, "No, I don't have to." Like, you make the time.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not easy. So we're all 4 of us, we're in different seasons. We have different barriers, but there's nothing that we can't handle. Mother runners, we can be very creative in figuring it out. So we're going to dive into that topic. But are you guys ready to dive into that today?
Yeah, let's do
I'm
it.
ready.
But
Let's
first,
talk.
Trisha did something super insane over the weekend. And
Super insane.
it really
Yes.
is insane. After she told us about it, we all the consensus was that doesn't sound like fun at all.
Olivia, you thought it was fun, right? Intriguing.
I thought it was
perhaps?
intriguing. Yeah,
Intriguing.
definitely. Until
Definitely
you said
intriguing.
how dark the woods are. Because if
Yeah,
you knew me, I'd be like, oh, I'm so scared.
Oh no. Yeah. Yeah. So I participated in the Tesla Hertz Ultra Running Weekend, which there was multiple races that went on. There was a 10-mile race, a 50-miler, 100-miler, and a 150. So one of my friends ran the 150-miler, and he attempted to do it last year and made it to 110, had a hurt ankle, had to bow out. And so he was going back with a vengeance, right? And so a couple months ago, I was like, you know what? I would love to help you because like, I want to see you get to this finish line of 150. So I did. And the original plan was I would jump in. So the race started Saturday and I would jump in Sunday to do the last 50 with him. Now, I did my first 50K in September. So I'm like, okay, 33 miles or whatever to 50. That's not too bad. So I went in with that mentality, but then ended up running 73 miles. So started at, and when I say this, I can't say it without laughing because I realize this sounds absolutely flipping insane. But yeah, so I started at 3 a.m. on Sunday morning, ran through the night, and we crossed the finish line at 7 a.m. Was that yesterday? No, I don't even know what day it is anymore. 2 days ago, Monday. So Monday.
Wow.
And it was wild. Like probably one of the craziest things I've ever witnessed. But as a pacer, so I was like crewing him and pacing him. I never really thought about myself at all. My main objective was like, how are you doing? How are you feeling? What do you need? Like just trying to make sure that he stayed in the right mindset. So I think like thinking like that, it made me able to kind of remove myself from me, So I do wonder, like, if it was just me and it was my race, like, would it have been the same? Now, granted, there were plenty of moments in the dark that I was like, oh my God. Before we went out for the last lap, I had taken a 15-minute nap right before we went out, and I was like, oh my God, my car is literally 5 minutes from here and it's warm.
Oh.
And go back to my Airbnb and go to sleep. And I was like, how big of an asshole friend would I be if I just bowed out before the last 10 miles? And I like got it together because part of it was he had already run 86 miles before I joined him. So I'm like, I can't complain about anything. I mean, he's so far ahead. So yeah, that's what I did. That was my weekend. It was a lot. It was a lot of, there's a lot.
I don't know. It's like, it's all of my kryptonites wrapped into one. Like, I hate being cold. I hate being sleep deprived. Like,
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
me too. Yeah.
running in the dark in the wilderness. Like, that's the crazy thing about ultras. Cause my husband has done several ultras, is like, it's not even the distance that makes it hard. It's the terrain. It's the fact you're like in the middle of nowhere. It's dark.
Yeah.
There's like mountain lions that can eat you. There's storms that pop up on mountaintops. Like, I mean, you guys are just insane. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so different than road races. I mean, not one thing is the same. Like, it's crazy, but it really does. Like, I'm just blown away with, there's so much like untapped potential that we have, that I saw. I mean, even just doing what I did, but in watching everyone do these insane distances, like, you think that you hit this like ceiling of potential with your running, and you do something like that, and it's like, holy crap! Like, the human body and mind are just incredible. I mean,
did you see that post talking about how like females actually can make like the best ultra runners? Like,
yes, yeah, I've heard that. Like, because
that one girl that did
Courtney DeWalter.
Yeah, I feel like her name is slipping my mind. She's like the only one that's gone that distance, and I'm like, wow, I kind of wonder like what females could actually do in that distance, you know?
Right. Yeah. They're seeing, like, the longer the distance is getting, they're seeing more and more females like Courtney DeWalter that, I mean, they're just dominating the field over men. It's like,
because we tap into fat more as a fuel source, right?
Well, and we're just tougher, I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We grow humans and stuff. Like, we are the superior gender, right?
Yes.
Yeah. If there's any takeaway from this podcast, I think that's what it should be.
I think
superior gender. You know, like, I just want to make sure that we congratulate you on your 73 miles, because like, he ended up running like 160 or whatever, and I know it's like he crossed the finish line and everybody was probably giving him accolades, which he deserves, but like, what you did was freaking badass.
Insane.
It's like mind-blowing.
It is.
Thank you.
I mean, like, you didn't even train for it. You just like, I'll pace you. Yeah, I'll do like almost triple what I was supposed to be doing. You know, like, I don't know.
Well, thank you. Thanks. Yeah, thanks. I mean, it is. It's kind of wild. And even still now, it's like, it almost doesn't feel like it happened. Like, it's like how did I do that? It's so crazy.
If you start hallucinating in the middle of this conversation, you're like, do you guys hear monkeys or chickens? Like, we won't fault you for it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I do feel like some of my brain cells definitely froze off in the middle of the night, I think.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness.
So cold.
Isn't it so funny too, like when you do these like massive accomplishments and stuff, and then you go home to your kids and they don't, like, especially the littlest one, like your 4-year-old probably doesn't grasp at all what you did. Like, you know, my son every day is like, did you run 100 miles? And I'm like, no, I did 8 today, you know. And the fact that they're just like, they'll humble you so quickly, you know. And like like the first thing when I got home from a marathon was, did you bring me a treat? I was like, are you kidding me? Like, no. But yes, I did. All these snacks are for you. But just, isn't it funny? Like, you're like, I just ran 70 something miles, and then you go home and you're like, well, I'm gonna have to do all their laundry too, not just mine. You know?
Yep.
Yeah, just
it's very humbling.
Yeah, kids definitely.
Yeah, that's why it
doesn't
feel real.
No, you're right. Yeah, because it like flipped back into reality so fast.
It reminds me of all those Instagram reels of like people, how I imagine it's going to be after I finish my marathon, and it's like, yeah,
so true.
It is not, especially with your kids. They're always like, "Did you win? Did you win?" And you're like,
right? Did you get first place?
Yeah. I've been feeling like super fatigued. I think I might be dealing with long COVID. And I was complaining to my daughter, Eleanor. I'm like, I'm running so slow. It's so weird. This never has happened to me before. And she's like, I don't get it, Mom. Just run faster. Just run faster. And I'm like, yeah, you make it so easy. I'm like, I'm trying. But anyways, okay. So training for an ultra. Now we're talking about time to run, finding time to run. Training for an ultra must be, you have 3 kids and it's not like they're teenagers. So how in the world do you manage to do this?
Right. I don't even know how to answer. It's like, so I have always my oldest will be 9 in December, and from the very beginning, I've had to do quite a bit on my own, and did a lot of solo parenting right off the get-go, where my husband traveled weeks on end. I mean, 2 weeks at a time internationally.
Oh,
I was
wow.
working. So I got used to the solo parenting very quickly and became very good at looking at my day to day and finding, and like you said, it's like not even just finding but making the time. And at that time I was working 30 hours a week, so I was doing 3 10-hour days. So I would look at these schedules and just see, okay, where can I fit in stroller runs, where can I get up early to run. And so from the beginning, I think that's kind of my like superpower as a mom, right? Is making time out of nothing. So with the ultra running, it's really a lot of the same, a lot of really early mornings, a lot of treadmill miles. I busted out a ton of incline work on treadmills over the past couple months. And really just focusing on time on feet. So versus like total mileage, or even, I mean, I haven't done any like quality speed work or anything, because what's the point? It's just distance. But that's really kind of how I did. I've done multiple over the summer, multiple 70-mile weeks, every range from like 50 to 70, and trying to hit double digits consistently, and like just hammering my body, trying to, go heavy lifting on legs and then do a long run. Like, just to really, just to get used to like running on fatigued legs. And so I've always been someone like, ever since I was little, when I started running in middle school, I can run for long periods of time. Like I would rather go out and run 20 miles or do a 20-mile race or a marathon than a 5K. Like endurance is my thing. So yeah, just really trying to do as much as I could with whatever time I had. But yeah, there's a lot of really early mornings, a lot of treadmill runs, a lot of stroller running.
Do you embrace like the progress, not perfection? Like you have to break it up. You have to fold in your kids. Like it's not how it's written on the schedule or whatever. It's just doing what you can with the time that you have and being happy with whatever gets done.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Because there's so many times where, I would be up like before 4 a.m. to try to get as much running as I could on the treadmill before my kids got up. Because I mean, if you go on my Instagram, you can see I'll do all sorts of workouts with my kids and stuff, but I cannot stand running on a treadmill with my kids around. Like that I can't. It's hard to focus. I just can't do it. So I tried it, but that's like best case scenario is that no one wakes up, and that's not how these things work out. So there's plenty of times where I'll have 1 or 2 kids wake up super early and they need this, they need that, they peed the bed, they're hungry. So where I'm like, okay, deep breath, pause the treadmill, get off, get them situated, get back on. I mean, there's been times where I've had like 3 or 4 breaks, but as long as like in my mind, I'm like, okay, it doesn't matter. I just need to keep going. And in some ways it's a really good way to train for these ultra events, because when you're out there for such long distances, I mean, you are taking breaks. And now, can you take this break and then get your head back in the game to keep going? So that's kind of how I changed the perspective. I was like, oh, these kids are helping me. This is part of my training.
I love that reframe. That's great.
Actually, that's I like that a lot, because to get your head back in the game can be the hardest honestly the
Yes.
hardest part, not the stopping, it's like the restart. So that does make
Right.
sense, especially when you're out on a like nothing is worse than stopping on a long run. Like your legs seize up and all that stuff. So you're just
Right.
practicing that. That makes sense. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's actually really
Yeah.
neat.
So would you say it's easier training for an ultra because it is kind of more laid back, like it is just time on feet versus training for a marathon and a certain marathon time?
Yeah, I think so because I've done both with kids, and I think for me, like I've worked with coaches before, and it's been amazing, but I end up putting a lot more pressure on myself. Like
Yeah.
Olivia, you said, it's like you almost need to like prove yourself kind of. And
Yes.
even like I know it's all in my head, but I can be very guilty of being very type A and regimented. So when I'm given a plan, I don't like to deviate from that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And having kids in the mix makes that way harder. And it's way harder to not be like, oh, okay, like I'll change you and then hop back on the trail. I'm like, oh, I messed up my split. Like, this is
Oh my gosh, yes.
It's true.
Yeah. So I think, and I don't know if it's just like the way that I approached it, and the mentality, like, okay, like this is not about pace. This is just about distance. That just takes so much pressure off it, or has for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I struggle so hard. I'm such a structured person. It's so hard to be
Right.
flexible. Like Olivia, so your husband is gone quite a bit, right? Because he's a firefighter, and so you
Mhm.
do a ton of treadmill miles, right? Like, so how do you make? And your
Yes.
kids are little, like they're young. So
Yes.
how do you make it
Yeah.
work?
It's been definitely an adjustment, and I definitely can feel the shift that's happening, they're 2 and 4, so their concept of, like, I'm gonna go run, like, they like it and they understand it a lot more now, and there's definitely days, like, it's definitely not perfect, like, my daughter, Charlotte, she, sometimes she just really doesn't want me to run, or she wants to get on the treadmill in the middle of it, which is so dangerous, but all of a sudden she's, like, hanging on the side, and it's like it's one of those moments where it's like, is this an easy run? Can I take a moment and can I spend 10 minutes with her so that she could maybe leave me alone for another 30 minutes? And so sometimes that's what it requires, which is it's mentally very hard, especially because, as road runners, we do care about those splits. And on easy runs, I did start heart rate training, so it's really taken the pressure off of what my actual times look like, and that helps a lot, and I'm like, this is kind of just a moment for me to reset. But it doesn't always, and then there's some days that they let me run for the full hour, for the full 75 minutes, and that helps a ton, to like at least know in my head that I'm like, okay, well, Tuesday you did get an uninterrupted run. Today you're just not going to have that, And for speed workouts, they actually do pretty well. I think the loudness of the treadmill kind of bothers them so that they don't want to interrupt. But it definitely wasn't always like this, because like it's going fast and they're like, I'm probably short with them when I'm talking to them too. So if I have to grab their granola bar and open it, I'm like, okay, and then I'll toss it to them, because I don't want them to like get close. So there's a lot of that happening, That is something that happens so often. And I've learned like you can't toss fruit snacks because the fruit snacks will go everywhere. But sometimes they're like, let's find the fruit snacks. There's just so much happening all the time. So then there's like the early wake up, right? So sometimes I have to do like a 2-hour treadmill run, but my treadmill is right under their room. So they usually hear and they'll talk to me from their room and they're like, Mommy, and it's like, they're just kind of, yeah, exactly. And they're just kind of a part of everything. So it's just finding time to do it. So, in the morning, they're very hyper and then they kind of hit a lull. And I'm like, okay, that lull is like when I can set them up on TV and, my phone. And then that's how I get it done. Or if the weather's nice, it's like, you know what, today let's just do the stroller run. Like we'll see how it goes. And so sometimes it's like 30-minute stroller, sometimes it's 30 minutes and then 30 minutes on the treadmill. So it's very broken up. And then sometimes it just ends up being, a post bedtime run. Like there's nothing I like less than starting a run at 8 p.m. But sometimes it's just what you have to do. But when they were little, and I think this is where moms struggle so much is that when they're little babies, 1 years old, and they constantly need you, it's like, where do you find the actual time to run? Like, how are you getting this in? And sometimes I look back and I was really stressed out. Like, I felt like, say I got a 10-mile day in that day, and I would think, like, how am I ever going to get this in again? Like next week might not look like this because like every week is different. But you just kind of have to get it in your head that that running at noon, as much as it's like not ideal, like no one wants to run at like noon or 1 p.m. It's so icky, but it's like that was just my time. And, I said no to a lot of lunch dates with friends or play dates with friends. And I just scheduled out like in my calendar, this is a meeting. Like it's a meeting with myself, but that's when my kids napped. And so if we had family over, even, I was like, this is when I run. This is when I run. And I always dedicated that time to myself. And I learned that lots of things can wait, because I think when kids are napping, we put it in our head, like, we need to do the dishes, we need to do the laundry, we need to do all these things. And it's like, I always prioritize. So run comes first. And then after that come the dishes. And then if there's no time for laundry, bummer. But no, laundry is like the one thing that it's not like you could just set it on your bed and it's not really affecting anybody's life. So it's like just a priority thing, So yeah, I think that's the hard part. And then I've entered this new season of life where my husband, he goes down to the fire department, but then he also has a job up here. So I never see like a full morning where I'm not splitting up my workout at this juncture. So yeah, it's definitely just about prioritizing and then just normalizing the verbiage with your kids. Like, okay, this is mom's going to run, and that's just what it is. And, and that it's special time for them too. You get to watch a show that I normally wouldn't let you watch. Like, unfortunately, YouTube is like something that they get when I run, but sometimes it's like, they get excited about it, and then it gives me time. And it's 1 hour out of our life. You know what I mean? Like, I can't sit and feel guilty about that. So, yeah, I think thinking back to how hard it was when they were little, like 2 and, 3 months old, and learning how to like run again and having to split up into like 20-minute increments and stuff like that, and feeling like it wasn't adequate, and just knowing that eventually that like those 20-minute blocks, they'll eventually turn into 25 minutes and 30 minutes. And then you get them on a nap schedule. And then you just prioritize. Like, it's okay to leave dishes in the sink and go do your run. That is okay. Like, and if someone ever makes you feel like it's not okay, don't listen. Like, seriously, get that out of your head.
That's true. You have the right to do that.
Yeah. And I think that was like the hardest thing for me to wrap my mind around, was because I always was like, I should be doing more for my household. And then I would be like grumpy and frustrated, and I've had no time for myself and things like that, And now it's like not even a second thought. I'm like, ooh, I'll do those dishes when I'm back from my run, because my kids are happy to watch me do dishes,
Right.
So, and that's not something that we question. So I think that's the main thing about making sure that when I am solo is that I figure out a way to get it done. And then unfortunately, like sometimes we just have to wait for that post bedtime run. And as unideal as it is, that it's better than not doing it, like you'll just feel better if you just get it done. So yeah, I think just getting used to running at unideal times is the name of the game when it comes to solo parenting. So, and then sucking up stroller running. Like that's, you just have to get used to it.
Well, and then you can reframe it like Tricia did, where like it's making you mentally tougher doing it
exactly
at unideal. And I always find that it's helpful whenever I'm struggling with something to think about like, well, I'm not the only one. No, like most people aren't running at ideal times. Most people are running super early in the morning or having to break up their runs or doing it late at night. Like the athletes that I coach, I'm always so impressed by the ones that are running at 9 p.m. I'm like, how in the
I
world are
know.
you doing this? Like,
Yes.
I'm like
Right.
falling asleep with my kids at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there's a common thread between you and Tricia that it's like letting go of perfection, running by time versus mileage helps a lot.
Yeah.
Shanna, you and Olivia have the same coach. So, and you guys are like heart rate based training, time versus distance. So, has that helped you? Because, I mean, to remind everybody, Shanna has 6 kids. So, it's a lot. And they're little.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely takes the pressure off of you. Like, I feel like I hardly ever like look at like my week, like, oh, I need 25 more miles, because my coach doesn't ever really go off miles other than like maybe a long run. It'll be like 20-mile long run. So you can kind of get an idea of like what you'll end up averaging at the end. But yeah, like there's been weeks that I'm like 60 miles and then other weeks I'm like 75. It just depends on the bulk of the workout. So that does take a lot of pressure off. I feel like there's less of me that's like, am I doing enough? Because if I'm following the regimen that my coach gives me, I'm like, he's not going to give me less than what I need. So that does give me a lot of reassurance and realization that like maybe a lot of us overtrain more than we need to for our goals. So that's been a very eye opener for me as a mom. But yeah, like, I mean, for me, like I feel like with my season of life, I'm kind of on a different side where, you know, before I did do like a lot of solo, a lot of stroller runs, a lot of even in my inconsistency of running, like I would always try to cram it at these weird hours with a lot of my kids with me. But now that I have 6 kids, I can't take 6 kids with me on a run. And that's been my adjustment, is figuring out how to train with 6 kids. And now in a season where a lot of them are in sports after school, or they're at church activities, or, you know, I'm doing my work stuff, and my husband has his schedules and his work stuff. And so that it's been such a different season of life. But with that, there's been some sort of flexibility in there too in our mornings, where I'm very appreciative. But again, it goes back to like last episode where, you know, I'm learning how to, is unguilt a word? But
it should be.
Reprogram my mind that I'm allowed to lean on my husband now that I can. Like now that he is here more present, or has more of a flexible morning than he's ever had in the past of our almost 10 years of marriage, I can take up that time. And it comes back to like what we talked about, taking up that space. And that's something that I'm like, it's okay if I wake up at like 7 and go from 7 to 8 o'clock on the dot, come in, roll in, help with kids and everything like that, and let my husband take the 6 to 7, you know? It's okay if I sleep that extra hour, where normally I wake up at like 5 o'clock to get out the door, to get back before everybody wakes up. But just like allowing myself to really like take care of myself too, where I have this season to be able to do that now. So that's kind of where I've been adjusting a lot. But again, it's like what they say, like there's times where I come back from my runs and I literally don't do my cool down until 11 a.m. But I did my workout at like 6 a.m. and I get those miles in on my treadmill after I do drop off, or after I get kids out the door, or get them ready, or get them fed, or get them situated. And it's not, no workout's perfect. No training cycle is perfect. But like you guys said, you're finding time in your day. And that's a big pet peeve of mine too, is like, wow, you're so lucky you have so much time, or wow, you're so lucky you have a spouse that's involved. And I'm like, what? Like, we equally brought these children into the world. Like, I'm trying to tell myself that we are a team. Like, we're lucky for each other. Like, you know?
Yeah,
and so absolutely. I think that's been how I've been able to get through this season. It's just like, I really lean on my husband at this point. And that puts me in a very, very vulnerable place as somebody that's been raised to be very independent. But it's made me appreciate my marriage more. It's trying not to get emotional here. I don't know why I'm about to cry, but it does. Like, I feel like there are, for the moms that are out there that do have that supportive spouse, because you guys don't, like, Tricia, you didn't have that. And I love that we can bring that message, because there are people out there that literally like, I wish I had a spouse that was there for me, you know?
Yeah.
And then there's like people like you, Olivia, whose husband's gone all the time. And literally me and my husband tell each other this, like, I don't ever want you to be in a career that you have to be gone. Like, I love it, you know? And so to have to go through that, like, that is so hard. Like, and so for me, I'm like, how ungrateful am I if I'm not wanting to lean on my husband that wants me to lean on him, you know? So I just hope like any moms that are listening to this, that they like really like, if they have that blessing or that opportunity in their life with a supportive spouse, like be grateful for that, but don't feel like guilty for utilizing that, like that side of your marriage, you know.
I
Sorry.
think, yeah, no,
Yeah,
I
very
think
good.
it's
I have
so
myself there.
challenging because we feel guilty anytime we have to like lean on someone or ask for help, or like we said in the past, I think the last episode, like if you don't feel guilty, there's going to be somebody on Instagram that says something that does make you feel guilty. Like, I mean, there have been so many times where I'm like, I feel bad to my husband, and he's like, it's fine. Like,
Yeah.
why are you feeling bad? I've tried
Mhm.
hard to replace guilt with grace, but it's just, yeah.
Mhm.
And obviously with 6 kids, you guys have to be a well-oiled machine. I mean, so I think that's amazing. And he's the one that like
Yeah.
encouraged you to get back into running too, right? So
Yeah, definitely. And like, we're not perfect, guys. Like, they're screaming from my door when I get to the door. Like, there's never a quiet morning here. Like, so I don't want to come off like, oh, we're like the Brady Bunch family, you know? Like, sunshine and rainbows. Like, there is the mornings are very intense over here. Like, some days I'm like, oh, 15 more minutes and they're out the door and I can breathe. Like, but yeah, it's not like peaceful and like quiet classical music or anything like that. It is loud, it is crazy, it is running around, it is madhouse, it is 6 kids. But yeah, we make it work.
There's clearly a lot of like love and support between you and your husband. That, I mean, that's huge. That's really huge.
We forgive each other a lot, or he forgives me a lot is probably what it more is.
I think that's so special if you have that. And you're right. If you have a spouse that is supportive, embrace it. Don't feel bad for it. I had a text from an athlete last night. She screenshotted a conversation between her and her husband, and she had a bad day at work, and he was telling her to go for a run. He was like, if you go for a run, but it's like self-serving too. I mean, it's super sweet, but he was also like, because then I know you'll be okay when you walk in the door,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. It's a win-win for him too.
That's so true.
Whitney, what about you?
Yeah.
I would say honestly, my biggest struggle is like throughout the season. So my kids are 7 and 10 now. So I am kind of getting into that sweet spot. Like they're both school aged. I work from home now. Like, so it's pretty, I have it way easy than most people, but it's still always sleep is a problem for me. Like when they were babies, both of my kids only nursed, and I felt like I was like honestly, I was like a human pacifier, you know? And it was, so that was really hard. And then when my son was 2 and my daughter was 5, and he was still up a whole bunch, and I was working full time from home with them home full time. And that was when I was running like 100 miles per week, and I was getting up at 3 a.m. to run. And that's when I broke, and I was so tired all the time. And I really struggled with that. But I got to the point where now, like in the summer, my husband goes to work pretty early, so I have to get up early to run because they're not old enough to be left home alone. I just started getting sitters. So like a few mornings a week, I'm like, can you come over? And it's not a total stress relief because my kids fight a ton. And so I'm like anxious the whole time about what's happening at home, and is the sitter okay? And are they hurting each other? But it just made it that much easier because I know for me, if I get less than 7 hours of sleep, a night for many nights in a row, I'm just going to start falling apart and I'm going to be extremely cranky too. So that's, but yeah, I mean, for me, it's a priority, and it's just, that's how I'm wired. I have to make it a priority. And anybody that knows me, it warms my heart if I'm going somewhere, like on a trip, which I don't do very often, but on a trip with my old friends where they're like, okay, and Whitney, you can run it this time. I'm like, thank you for taking that
I
into
love that.
consideration.
Yes.
So nice.
But yeah, the key now, because my kids, they're in a lot of extracurriculars, and now the key is, like you guys have learned, is flexibility. I used to be with my old coach, it was a super rigid schedule. And it was like, if you moved, because there were several workouts a week and a couple, a long run and a midweek long run. And it's like, if you moved one thing, then it just like shot the rest of your training cycle, basically. It's like, well, you're screwed. Yeah, all the dominoes fall. And so now it's so wonderful to be able to have it be flexible and be like, well, I think I'll do my long run on Monday because we have early soccer games over the weekend. And I just think that's like letting go of perfection, and then also embracing flexibility as much as you can is key. Because otherwise you just can't make it work. And running becomes a stress inducer instead of a stress reliever, because you're just like, how am I going to get that workout in? And if I miss the workout, then everything else falls apart. And I don't know.
I think the flexibility, especially with like the long run, right? Like I think that's what the hardest thing was to wrap my mind around when I got a coach, because I'm very new to having a coach. But I used to do, if I had a long run and that was the only day my husband was home, I would do it on a Wednesday, and so sometimes they were a little close together, a Sunday and a Wednesday. That's not ideal, but it always got me to the finish line, and I think I've also like, I put these like rigid times in my head, and I slowly have to let go of them sometimes, like if not every season is a PR, not every season is going to be marathon season. I was signed up for Chicago Marathon. I would have loved to have done it. Was it fair to my family to go and do it? Nope, it wasn't. Like, it just wouldn't have made sense. And so letting go of things like that, it's okay, it's hard, and it's so fine to complain about it and be sad about it, but it's not this like end all be all, because we like lock in on it. And I think that for so many of us, like, I know, Tricia, you're not road racing right now, but I bet you can think back to when it was like this, is like, we get it in our heads, like, we need to do this, otherwise we will never cross that finish line. And it's such a silly thought, because we are so strong, and of course we will. If we miss one long run, it's not the end of the world. And so being flexible is paramount, and before I had kids, I was working 12-hour shifts, and I mean, I would work so many days in a row. And so you can train for a marathon on 3 days of running. You can train for, it really is just about how much you want to commit to your time to running and to quality workouts, right? I think we've all learned that as we've gotten older. Like in our 20s, it's like, yeah, let's go bang out 17 miles at a 7-minute pace. It's like, that sounds so fun, right? But then you learn like longevity, that's not going to work. And then all of a sudden you have kids, and it's like, how are you going to do 17 miles on a Tuesday, And, when I had work, I always had weird schedules, like 4 a.m. to 4 p.m. And, so you're always tired, and it's like just learning to go with the flow. And it's like, yeah, I guess, I just worked a 12-hour shift, but I'll go run after. So having access to like a 24-hour gym is huge. And sometimes, I'm watching my husband right now. He's trying to find slivers of time for himself, because when he goes to the fire department, and then he comes home and he works here, and he's at an office all day, and all of a sudden there's no time now left for him, and he's prioritizing my running. And it's like, how can I support you? And I'm like, I'll keep the kids up a little bit later if you go to the gym after work, and then that's how you get your run in. Or maybe run home, like I'll drive you to work in the morning if you leave your car there, because that's what I would do. I always have figured out, like, you know what, I live 5 miles from there, I'm gonna run there, and just, even if you show up sweaty or whatever, like for a coffee date or something, I would always do things like that. And so it's just finding ways to like sneak the miles in. Like I've always thought of it like that. And that's how you have to stay flexible with it, is just, how are we going to sneak this one in today? Right.
Right.
So
Get creative.
yeah, you just
always have to get creative. Yeah, that's funny. I've done that with my husband too, of trying to support him, to make sure, because it takes the guilt off you. It's like, well, if you have your thing, then I don't have to feel guilty about my thing. So yeah, I'd be like, make sure you run before you come home. Like, you don't have to rush home. It's fine. I got it.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else you guys want to share on the topic?
I think one more thing I want to share too is, like, Olivia, you mentioned like when they're little, and it's so, I'm not going to say harder, but it's hard because your schedule is just so unpredictable.
Yeah.
It always kind of is with kids. Like, you don't know if they'll be sick or, whatever. But then it's like, you have no clue when this baby will sleep, if they'll sleep. Like, so, and with any other stage in your life as a mother, it's, if you are in one of those seasons where it's really hard and you're looking at your schedule and you're like, I don't know, like, be okay with taking a step back and have confidence in knowing that no stage lasts forever. It's constantly changing, right? Yep. So, because it can, if there's like a new mom listening to this now that was training for marathons and they're like, how the hell, I'm on zero sleep, my baby doesn't sleep, like, it can be intimidating.
I think that's such a great point of, I always have thought about just back in that early phase, because we talked about the comparison trap, and we talked about how easy it is to compare what other people are doing, and like, as if we're postpartum and we're just supposed to jump into a 5K because we saw somebody else do it. That's crazy. That's not like, you don't have to do that. And if you want to get back into running, that it's okay to walk, and to, like, if you're not ready for stroller running yet, like, it's okay to walk and then practice like pushing the stroller and seeing how your child does even in that environment. And then suddenly, it's like, that's at 3 months old. And then suddenly they're 6 months old and they can have snacks and things like that. And suddenly you're like, I got an extra 15 minutes out of them today. And those small increments of times, and that these seasons don't last forever. It's so true. Like, I think we've all kind of seen each way that our kids are getting older. And then, when you do bring a new baby into it, if you are planning on continuing to grow your family, you'll kind of know how to make those adjustments. Like, I did it before. I ran for 10, 15 minutes at a time. And, in between babies, I ran a marathon, those kinds of things, So that's so true, that seasons just don't last forever.
Yeah, I think the one constant of parenting is that nothing's ever constant. It's always changing.
That's so true.
Yeah,
that is so
for
true.
good or bad.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so we want to start ending with like a fun little thing called the Ventilator, right? Is that what we want to start doing? So where we're going to share, if we have any, just our little vents from the week. And I don't want it to come across as negative, because, we want this to be a positive, uplifting podcast. But it's also like, this is what moms do when we get together and run. It's a therapy session, right? We get things off of our chest, and we just feel better. Okay, so I'm going to open it up. Does anybody have anything they need to use a ventilator for? Anything to share?
Shanna.
But she's in the hot seat.
I'm still thinking which one I want to burn myself with. I may have some other I have a good way to word it, I think. Mine, we talked about this before we hopped on here, right? So I live in Utah. It's a different bubble of running. We have a lot of like very, very steep downhill runs here. And I mean, for me, I get constantly, I can't tell you how many people, we just had a recent race here in St. George. That's a big marathon race for us in Utah. And I have had, I can't even tell you how many people, why haven't you ran St. George Marathon? Like, I don't understand why you won't just run local races. And it is really hard for me because, I mean, to be transparent, like my goal is to Olympic trial qualify one day. Like that is on my radar. I feel like it's a reasonable goal for me to reach for, but it requires you running certain courses to qualify for that. And for those courses, they have to make sense in your training and they have to make sense time-wise. And so for me to go and run races like that here in Utah, it makes zero sense because it doesn't translate to my paces on a flat road. And for me, it is really, really hard. It's really, really hard for me to live here and hear those times on these downhill courses and, you know, the pressure of like, why aren't you out there running locally? And yeah, so that's been my struggle, especially since the race just barely happened. It's like trying to like separate myself and keep my focus on my particular path, but also being okay with like other people having their own path and their own desires and what excites them. So
Definitely.
I think you're pretty safe to just be like, yeah, I only run, you know, OTQ qualifying courses.
Ooh, snap.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Really
Oh, yeah, I'm sure they'd love to hear that. Oh, sorry. I love it.
All right, Olivia, do you have one?
Well, I don't know if you guys know, but I received my first troll on Instagram and I was so excited. You guys,
You were excited.
I have made it. Like, because, you know, it's like, I love Instagram, the running community in it. It's so supportive. Like I genuinely believe, I don't have a very large account, but I genuinely believe I could message any of these people and be like, hey, do you want to go for a run with me? And that they would. Like, I'm in your city. Like, I love it so much. And so I was like, it can't be like this forever. Someone's got to be mad at me. And someone finally was. And
What was it?
Yeah, what did they say?
Well, Whitney, they even responded to your comment. And it was something that, because I'm a treadmiller, I am not a marathoner. I'm just an Instagrammer. And I was like,
oh, wow.
Yeah, it was like he kept going too. And then
he
kept going.
Men,
and
by the way.
Finally,
always.
Oh, yeah. It's always and he was like, I have 35 years in the fitness industry. And then I just was like, thank you so much for the engagement on my post. Like, this to me, it was so funny. And it was just so funny. He was like defending himself. And I was like, you know, and like, he's one of many people that doesn't believe that if you run on a treadmill that it counts, which is so funny. And so I just said, you know, I must have been lost in a big parade. I was like, should I give my medals back then? Was I just like grabbing a medal at the end then? And I'm not a marathoner, just running on a treadmill. And people were like, can you explain this to me? It was just so funny. And he kept going, like, he really wants to make his point, because normally a troll is like, man, just an Instagrammer, and then moves on. He doubled down, and I was so grateful for it.
so glad that you were happy about it. Right.
So you went,
so you're like increasing the engagement on the post too in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he replied to your comment, Whitney, because you were saying something about mental strength on the treadmill, and it was like, what? Like, it was something like, what, by wasting your time or something? I was like,
I love how these people too, like, he's been in the fitness industry. Is that what he said? For 30? Did he? Yeah, like, usually when you click on those people, it's like a picture of a cat or something.
Right.
No, like, no profile picture. Yeah, a cat. I love it. Yeah.
Right.
So, yes.
Oh my gosh.
So that was my little grievance. Although let's spin it to positive, because thank you.
Thanks. Yes. Yeah, I noticed. You know, you gained like 2,000 followers in the past week, probably because of him. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
that'd be nice. All right, Tricia, do you have one?
Oh, you know, I'm trying to think.
She's still like, where are we in the woods, man?
Yeah, she's like,
you know, Yeah, I'm very grateful for a whole lot after that weekend. It's like I'm not in the middle of the woods in the
I'm
dark and
grateful I'm
it's cold anymore.
alive.
Right.
Shanna
Yeah, I
was
don't know.
like, I don't even know how you're talking. Like,
Yeah.
how
I
are you even
know.
functioning right now?
If I had to pick one complaint or vent, I think it would just be this like ridiculous like expectations that school set for us. Like it's a freaking part-time job
Yeah.
to read all of these emails from the schools and expect to be on top of all of our kids' shit. Like that's my complaint because I just can't do it anymore. Like,
That's a good one.
It's homework. Why am I doing 4 hours of homework?
right.
Are you
Oh my
Gosh.
gosh.
And by the way, you need to like get a pumpkin to send in with one kid and like 5 different types of candy corn for the other because like I just don't understand. I don't remember that as a child. I mean, maybe like why would I remember? But right?
I
Like
think I
all these
decided this
expectations.
morning I'm going to start being, I don't care. I'm just going to be the annoying parent that just like checks in with the teacher and is like, are we good? Do I owe you anything?
Yeah.
Like,
Do I?
Yeah.
I just, because like, my daughter's got a big field trip next week and I thought I handed everything in. That's the thing. I don't remember. And so I was like, am I good? Am I on the chaperone list? And she's like, your background check expired. I'm like, oh, damn. Like, why did it expire? I don't understand. They're still there. Like, how am I supposed? So, yeah, I'm like, I don't care if you find me annoying or it looks like I don't have my shit together. Just assume that I don't. But again, it was another instance where I thought of you, Shanna, where I was just like, she has to deal with this six times
six.
over.
6 times over.
You guys did it.
I don't have any specific thing that I need a ventilator for other than I was at a doctor's appointment. I opened up my Instagram and it was just like everybody was humble bragging. And that just really irks me. I just feel like there's a lot of humble brags on Instagram. Like even just if we keep this in the vein of time management where people are just humble bragging on like how much they do in a day and like how much they get it done and they make the time or they find, I don't know. It just like, great, good for you. Now I feel like a failure. Like, what is that about? I don't know.
Right.
It bothers me.
Yeah.
But nothing in particular. It's just thought, like, I feel like everybody does it almost.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's what Instagram that's what like 90% of it is anyway. I do love a good brag. Like I think people should absolutely let's be
Just
proud
do
of
it.
what
Just-
we've done.
Right.
Like yes, like let's brag about like you should be bragging about your 70-mile week like that or race. Like that's incredible. But
I haven't even mentioned it on Instagram. Like
I know.
I don't
It's
know.
like the humble brag of like ate, so healthy today. And so I'm like, okay, that's
I
crazy.
had my AG1 and my
Pringles. Yeah, like just
G1.
it's like, oh, that's
Mm.
so great. I'm so glad you feel so good. I just I ran out of bells and I'm grabbing candy for the weekend. But
Your Nutella. I loved your Nutella post.
Oh my
That's
gosh,
me with peanut butter.
I
Oh,
like
is
that.
I
it?
posted something about
Yes.
peanut butter once, like years ago, Tricia, and you did a reel showing me how to make my own cashew butter, and yes, it's like you are amazing because I love my nut butter.
That's so yummy.
But I guess like then if Tricia bragged and was like, look, I ran 73 miles, or somebody would be like,
Mhm.
well, nice, you have so much time, and who is watching
Oh,
your kids,
yeah.
and like,
Right. That's kind of
Yeah.
part of the reason why I haven't even
Yeah.
said anything because I'm like, ugh, is it worth it
Yes.
for these people to come
It
out of
is.
the
You're allowed
their
to be
caves?
proud. Yes.
and then you can pull an Olivia and reframe it and be like, thank you for the
Yes.
engagement.
Thank you
And I'm
so
due. Like
much.
I haven't had a good troll in a while, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm
I was
due.
so pumped.
Overdue.
Oh my gosh. I was like, because I
they're
was
the
also like,
best.
how will I handle it? Am I going to dwell on it? And I was like,
Yeah.
I am stoked. And I had no idea because I'm sensitive. So yeah. Someone could be like, you have something in your teeth. And I'm like, you hate me. And so I was like excited. Yeah.
I will have to say, the last thing I'll say is, well, I just delete them now. They do,
Mhm.
but I am sensitive, and I think Shanna, I asked you about that, and you were just like, you
Yeah.
can just delete it or just ignore it, and there's going to be
Yeah,
people
that's
like
what
that.
I do too.
But I remember I once got an email back in my TV days that was like the title or the subject line was your face. And I was like, oh shit, like this is not going to be good. And then it was an email where this guy just ripped apart like my entire face, except for my nose. He didn't say anything about my nose, but he was like, your eyes are too big and you're wearing too much lipstick. And like, you should consult with one of the senior anchors about how to do your makeup. And
what? A guy?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was like a 70-year-old man who lived in nowhere, Tennessee. And then he's like, and your appearance goes up 90% when you wear your hair back. And I'm just like, oh my God.
90%.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's why I never wear my hair down anymore. I'm just kidding.
Wow.
Like, I'm
no
like,
way. Oh,
it's like, I
that's
come to
crazy.
wherever you
Wild.
are. And yeah.
Wow.
Anyways.
Oh my gosh,
So,
people are amazing.
People
Wow.
are amazing. There's our positive note we'll end on. People are just amazing.
People are amazing. As they say in the South, bless their hearts.
Bless. Oh my gosh. Such a Southern thing.
I love it.
Okay. Well, on that note, for all of you listening, we are so happy that you're here. And as we grow this podcast, and we would love it if you subscribe, tell your friends, if you leave a review, a nice review, maybe, or you can be a troll. We may read it. So we may read it out loud on the next episode. So do that because we need that engagement, good or bad. We need it, right?
Yes. Should we give them a quick call to action? Quick call to action?
What should we do?
How about we have everybody look at their schedules and find where they can make the time for runs and let us know.
Oh, yeah.
Share it with us.
Yes.
I love that.
Okay.
The more creative, the better.
Yes.
Yes. I'd love to hear from like working parents, like full-time working, like, you know, nurses and the trenches and doctors and all that stuff. Like, how do you make time? You know? Yeah.
Yes. I love that. And we'll share what you guys share with us on the next episode.
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks,
Cool.
ladies.
All right.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.